Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Digital Data Podcast. I'm Cecilia Maundu. I'm a broadcast journalist. I'm a digital security trainer. I work at the intersection of technology, human rights, and journalism. And today, our topic is on small, medium enterprises and cyber hygiene. The world has gone digital, and so businesses have been compelled to go digital. And today, we are talking about cyber hygiene practices for small, medium enterprises. I'll give an opportunity to my guest to introduce himself. He's a cybersecurity expert. But before then, I would like to say this episode has been made possible by Kenya ICT Action Network, that is KICTANet, in collaboration with KPMG and the ICT Authority with support from the UK government. And this organization are implementing a joint project to promote cyber hygiene awareness in Kenya. And one of them is this. And they are targeting small and medium enterprises. The project has so far developed a cyber hygiene awareness curriculum covering 10 key topics and content targeted at small, medium enterprises, SMEs. So, as part of this initiative, the partners have conveyed a one-day cyber hygiene awareness workshop, which will be taking place soon, targeting 80 participants drawn from various SMEs in Kenya. And it has produced this podcast, their posters, their video features, and comic strips. So, look at KICTANet website and you will get all this information. So, Brian, introduce yourself.
Thank you, Cecilia. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all well. My name is Brian Nyali. I am a lead risk consultant and also lead the digital forensics team for a cybersecurity consulting firm operating within Africa. Thank you for having me.
Wow, your description. Wow. Thank you so much for making it to the show. I know it's not been an easy road because of your schedule. We really appreciate, and our friends from KICTANet speaking on their behalf. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, Brian, we are talking about cybersecurity for small, medium enterprises.
Yeah.
Let's just give us an overview. How is the cybersecurity? I mean, with the work you do, you work a lot with SMEs. So, how have you seen the trajectory of their cybersecurity practices, their cyber hygiene practices?
I'd have to say it's really improved over time. It's really gotten better. It's when I started working where I'm working, it wasn't as good as I thought it would be, and it's taken a lot of time to build it to where it is. So a lot of education of both the board's management, employees across board, and also even the people who do business with these SMEs to help them understand the need for cybersecurity, why it's important, and why they need to invest in it. So especially the investing in it part, because it may not have direct returns to whatever they're doing as a business. So it's more or less seen as something that takes away rather than adds into the pot.
You know, I remember one time, I think it was a KICTANet function, and someone from your organization said that most of this institution look at IT or cybersecurity as an IT department issue. They're not involved, you know, like the way human resource would do their work, let the IT department do their work. And fortunately, they don't know now because of the era that we are in. Everyone has to be involved. So it's very encouraging to hear that things are changing.
Yes.
And I'm hoping in the next few years, we are going to be having a very different conversation. So, Brian, what are the most common cybersecurity threats that SMEs or small, medium enterprises should be aware of today? What are the things that they should be very keen about?
Traditionally, most of the organizations that were concerned about cybersecurity or security in any sense of it were those in the banking sector, because there was a direct impact on their core business, which is the finances. And because they're banks, they're big, they're regulated by a bigger body, then there's a lot of heat if anything goes wrong. And because of the clientele, people would be able to be up at arms very easily when they see something going wrong and something of the sort. So for the SMEs and other organizations, it wasn't really a primary concern. But as time has shown us, these SMEs have had to go online. They've had to digitize what they do, their services, etc. So they've now introduced their systems, their technology to the internet. And as they do that, there's been an impact on the same, because the same systems that you would use for your own good purposes, there's someone who wants to utilize them for not so good purposes. So financial loss has become a real thing for SMEs, in as much as they may feel that we don't have as huge a pool of money as some organizations, but they're still targeted for that money, because at the end of the day, if someone is trying to get quick money, small or big, it's something they've gotten. Two, data. We've seen data protection coming into play in the recent years, not just in Kenya, but globally. And now there have been fines left, right, and center targeting even schools in some cases. So we can see that it's no longer targeting the big boys or corporates, but now also small organizations. So they have to take that into account. And aside from financial loss, data loss, there's also interruption of services. Unfortunately, we experienced something as an entire country last year, where services were down. So it does also impact SMEs, because if your clientele can't reach your services, then why are they there? So this is some of the key things that have been affecting SMEs of late, and that they definitely have to be worried about.
That brings me to my next question, the issue of data protections.
Yes.
Which are some of the mechanisms they can do? Because some of them handle a lot of our sensitive data. So what are some of the mechanisms they can do to protect our data? Because, for example, when I go to maybe I'm buying something, or maybe I'm in an M-Pesa shop or something, and I left there my ID, my name, my ID is literally my identity.
Yes.
So what are some of the things they can do so that we can also avoid getting messages from political campaigns, and you have never even been to that county, and you wonder, how did they get my number? Yeah. So what are some of the mechanisms they can use to protect our information?
I think it cuts across board, not just at the SMEs, but when we focus on them, the key things to do in this case would be starting with identifying what kind of data you guys handle or you guys have. So just that step alone gives you some level of visibility as to how bad things are or how good things are. So you'll be able to say, we handle critical and sensitive data. What kind of critical and sensitive data do we handle? That's the first step. We've identified that we do. Now, where does this data sit? Where is it stored within our organization? Which systems is it on? Once you've identified the systems, then now you can go a further step of saying, who has access to the systems? Internally and externally, in terms of our vendors, people we do business with, people we interact with, our staff, who has access? Should they be having that level of access? So you've taken it a step further from we've identified what kind of data we have. We have known now which systems this data is on. We have now knowledge of who has access to this data, whether employees, vendors, other people we do business with, people who just are in the office. In some cases, the data is printed out somewhere, and it can sit on a printer for days on end. So you may not think about it as data, but if someone else came and pulled that and it's a copy of your ID, a copy of your logbook or something of the sort, that's data that can be used in one way or another.
Yeah.
So identifying what that data is, where it sits, who has access, then now you can start securing it, where you can say, do we have strong passwords for these systems that handle this data? Do we have visibility on who has access to it? Okay, we have X number of vendors. Why do they need access to data set X, data Y, and Z? With that, you can now start fine-tuning those restrictions. If I, as a vendor, only need access to a certain element, I shouldn't get access to the whole data set. If I, as an employee, only need to see a certain element of that data, then expose just that to me. So with those small screws that you keep turning, then you increase the security around that data. And then you can tell who has access, and also now monitor and see it. If I work with this vendor and they only should be accessing our data between these hours, if I see off business hours access to that data, then that should tell me there's something wrong. If I start seeing data being transferred out of our organization that shouldn't be transferred, then I'll be able to say that there's something amiss here. So it's just small steps that get you to a better point. There are tools that can be used, but in some cases, it's not economically viable. So just those small steps can help. Then when the finances allow, you can go the second level of now using certain tools that are specifically focused on data security.
Something you said that was very thought-provoking, like who has access to this data, both internally and externally?
Yes.
I think most of them, because the data is there, they believe that, and I'm not making an assumption here, they believe that data, anyone can handle that data. Case in example, when you go to a cyber cafe, I know they have drastically reduced over the years, but there's still some cyber cafes, especially in town. And actually, when you go to those cyber cafes, they're always full. So people are in need of services. So you go, you find someone has actually printed an ID, and this person goes to check on the printer, and they're like, no, you didn't print both sides. So they print both sides. So the other one is left at the printer, then it's picked, thrown at the dustbin. Somebody else comes, those small things that you're talking about. So it brings me to the next question: training. Like, what are the status of training of employees on cybersecurity in small, medium enterprises? Are they trained? Do they know? Because some of them actually don't know. Yes. So what is the status of training?
Funny you bring out something about cyber cafes. There's a day I asked myself, when you walk into a cyber cafe and you see their email address there, xyz@gmail.com, do we realize how much data we leave them with when you send it for them to print it? Like, they're left with your ID, your certificates, some people. There's someone I saw who printed their bank plate. I was like, hey, okay, but story for another day.
But I think sometimes, let me come to their defense. Sometimes they don't know, because I've also been a victim of that. You go there and you're like, oh, send to this email, because you're in a hurry and you send it.
True.
And then later is when you're like, oh my goodness, that is told in the...
Yes, they have it ad infinitum.
Yes.
The day they decide to delete it is when it will go, but they have access to it.
Yeah.
So in regards to training, there are a lot of initiatives that have been put in place across board. ICT Authority, KICTANet, specific organizations, even the one I work for, which is Serianu. There's been a lot of education around data security, around information security that's been put out there. Unfortunately, it won't get to everyone. That's a sad reality. Some organizations take it seriously and will enforce that every quarter their employees have to do something in terms of training, either physically or through certain platforms, either a banner or something of the sort that's sent to them, or even set as the background for their desktop that will just highlight certain key elements. But the reality is it's not across board. Not everyone will be trained on information security and the importance. Even if you look at some organizations, they have agents who are out in the field. So at the corporate office, those guys will be trained. But the agents who sit out there, who would ideally handle this sensitive data, your ID, your card, and such kind of things, and your information, they may not get the training as to the data that's sitting in that book where you record all these things is important, and not everyone should have access to it. Two, you've employed someone to sit and handle that. What stops them from giving someone a quote-unquote locum when they need to do 1, 2, or 3 things? And the person they bring in isn't really aware of the sensitivity of what they're handling. So I'll leave, I'll go and handle my business in town, and the person I've left holding fort for me isn't too conversant with such kind of things. So if someone comes and asks to see that book, they can give them the book.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're given an extra 100, 200, 300,000 shillings to get 10 pages worth of good data that you can use,
they'll do it.
Yes. So the education can't just end at the corporate level. It has to go beyond. It has to go to those agents in the field. It has to go to the small people who you may not really ideally target for the education, and also channel it in a way that they would understand. We do the banners, we do the videos, but if it's not in a language someone would relate to, if it doesn't make sense or resonate with them, it unfortunately becomes a problem.
I know you said that it would not be possible to be able to get everyone, to get
Yes.
the information, but how can we also try as much as possible to get it to everyone? Because I keep saying, if there's anything COVID-19 underscored, is the importance of the internet. We
Yes.
went digital, our lives are
True.
digital,
Yeah.
So meaning, like, literally, we are not saying everyone is online, because of course the digital divide is still there, very wide, and we know a lot of people have been left behind because of accessibility and all that. But how can we try and get more people, especially people who are actually using this platform? Because we look at the issue of e-governance in Kenya, 5,000 services online, meaning a Kenyan who wants a service has to be online.
True.
So
Yeah.
how can we try and get it to everyone? I know KICTANet has been doing a lot of things, your organization, but also how can we move away from Nairobi? Because I feel like everything we've centered here. How are we getting outside Nairobi?
A key thing that I've seen work over the last 2 years, especially targeting SACCOs. Why SACCOs is because SACCOs are a very sweet spot in the SME
Yes.
sector.
They're very key.
And they have an immense reach at that level, because the people who are in the SACCOs, who more or less are part of the SACCOs, are the everyday person in different sectors away from Nairobi, more or less. These SACCOs have a great reach. And there's some SACCOs I know we've worked with over the past few years, and they're able to call in their members during part of their meetings, their annual AGMs, and they'd have certain things talked to their people about, where they're educated on a few elements around security, around why you shouldn't do this, why you should enable this on your phone to prevent the SIM swap and all these things. And they're able to understand. And once those people understand, as they go out into their everyday jobs, they can share the information with others that they interact with or meet who are facing the same issues. Two, they've also been able to organize where SACCO members' children come in for an ICT day training,
Oh, wow.
where the kids who are in university studying ICT or what come in from all the universities within that region or locale. And they come and they're trained on certain matters on information security, cybersecurity, and its importance. So it goes beyond just the organization itself, where you have now SACCO members trained and also their children trained. The good thing about the children is they'll help their parents.
Yeah.
And as a result, it goes wider and wider. And I would also want to say we can tap into something that we've seen in the health sector. If you look at the health sector, in dealing with the common problems like cholera, etc., typhoid, what they did is they started doing targeting radio, because it had a wider reach to certain select groups, where they'd constantly have certain messages targeted at the people who are listening to them, because they realized that radio had a broader reach for them. So augmenting all these things to make sure that we get to the end goal, which is educating the masses, it really does help. And I think it will go a really long way.
Oh, I find that concept very interesting of bringing the children and all that, because now it's trying to bring everyone on board. The nice one. So, can you provide examples of successful cyber hygiene implementation on SMEs, like real cases that you've seen in this country?
One thing I really like to emphasize when it comes to security is basics. I think we look at security as such a complex problem, but we realize that these things are our own basics. If we look at phishing is one of the easiest ways people get targeted. But what does it boil down to? Understanding that you shouldn't click on links. Very simple thing. You shouldn't share passwords. You shouldn't give out certain information. I'm saying this, but at the same time, someone in my family was recently targeted with such a thing. And they read out the code to the person who'd called them. It's unfortunate, but it happened. So again, I say it really boils down to the basics. So people in the sectors, the key things, get the basics right. Using strong passwords. One, it's a very good thing. Not sharing pins and passwords with people, very good at the same time. Also being mindful of how you're accessing certain portals. On open internet, without any VPN or anything like that, it's again a problem altogether. You get a flash disk somewhere, you just go and plug it in. You don't have an antivirus on your computer or something of the sort. It boils down to really the basics. Even when you look at the SMEs, a big challenge they have is licensing of their products. You're using Microsoft, you're using etc. Getting a proper licensed version of that is not cheap.
Oh, wow.
So you'll end up using one that's not well licensed or fully licensed. As a result, there are things that may not work very well. 2, you'll get an antivirus, a free one for 30 days, then you'll get another free one for another 30 days, another free one for another 30 days. It really doesn't improve the security posture. So just getting those basics right, get a good antivirus. If you can't afford the licensed software, there are good open source softwares that also can be used and can provide the same level of access and technology that you need. So I really insist it boils down to the basics. Yeah.
Let's go a little bit deeper on open source. Please try and demystify open source, because it's, those tools are there.
Yes.
And they are not created for profit. They're created for purposes of security and privacy.
True.
But people are yet to know about open source tools. Can you just demystify a bit on open source tools?
Well, open source software is created purposefully for that, for anyone and everyone's use. And there's no one who's going to come and knock on your door that you haven't bought a license for this, that, and the other. Now, it does give you the same functionality as this other software, but the reality about open source is it takes some deeper level of understanding in some cases, or just taking the time to find it and making sure that it works for you. Now, some organizations may not necessarily want to invest that time or effort in it. But if you do, you'll actually find that it works. I've worked for organizations that run 100% on open source software. And we've been able to do our business effectively and efficiently without any problem. The time that you'll just need to invest some more time in understanding how it works and just optimizing it for you. Organizations find that as a challenge, because in such cases, the knowledge may sit with one person. So when this one guy in the IT team who had an understanding of all these things leaves and he didn't document anything, then the knowledge has left with that guy. So there's the safety that this other software, anyone can operate with it. But open source software really works. Even for security tooling, you can find tools that give the same functionality as others that are licensed and have very high licensing fees.
And even perform better.
And perform very well.
Way much better.
You may just need to invest a bit more time in understanding it, but they work perfectly well. Yeah.
Now that we are talking about open source tools and software, we have our Sustain series, which is a series where we are talking about 6 different tools. And Sustain is a project by Internews, sustaining safety tools with an analytic and networking and insights. And you will learn all about open source tools. Please stay tuned on that. So, Brian.
Yes.
What are some of the role of cybersecurity awareness training for employees, and how can SMEs effectively implement them? And I'm talking about baby step, because cycling back to your point, when sometime we are doing trainings on digital safety, you start talking about passwords, people look at you like, oh, I thought we were here to learn something very big. Because people think like, oh, passwords, really? Tell me something big. But passwords is your first line of defense. That's what people don't know. It's your first line of defense. Because if they're able to crack your password, then they're able to find like literally every of your information.
Yeah.
The same with phishing. I don't know if you've experienced that. These messages we keep getting nowadays, oh, if you don't respond on time, your package will not be delivered. And you're like, oh, and you see somebody's like, oh, I had a package I didn't know. Let me click and find out. Before you know it, you've been hacked. Sure. So what are some of the trainings that employers in in SMEs can start with their employees? Because sometimes they do those things because of lack of knowledge.
True. There's a lot of lack of knowledge going around, and I really want to emphasize that it shouldn't be specifically targeted at employees alone. The boards and management need to also be roped in.
Now we are speaking about spending money. You remember when you said like, oh, they see
Yes.
it as a way of it getting out money but not bringing in money.
Yes,
Yes. Eh.
but at the same time, I feel there are a lot of partners out here. If you look at CA, if you look at ICT Authority, KICTANet, and the likes, they're offering training for free. They're not charging these
Yeah.
organizations.
For sure.
And it just requires some commitment from the organization to avail their people and they'd be educated. So I think the education should start not only at the employee level, but at the board level. When the board gets to understand the importance of cybersecurity and investing in it and taking time to understand it, then they're able to take a step of holding management accountable on matters cybersecurity. Then management at the same time, when they're aware and properly, they have proper knowledge around it, they're able to also hold their own internal staff accountable. So there's a ripple effect such that everyone is aware and understands why there's an importance in doing these things, not just the employees.
Please.
Because we understand if I, as an employee, click that link and this happens, it impacts the organization. If I, as a manager, I'm targeted through phishing and I click that link and someone gains access to my mailbox and can issue instructions to a junior employee, then there's an impact. If I, as a board member, don't understand the importance of cybersecurity and management comes to me with a request for approval for certain vulnerability assessment or to buy a certain tool, if I don't understand the need and its importance, I won't approve it. So there's education that needs to happen at all levels, and it's key because each one of those players or each one of those people plays a very important role. From the person who's interacting with the technology and the people's data and the systems to the person who's giving oversight in terms of management and the board overall. So if we all have that level of education, including even our own clients, the SACCO clients, the SME clients, if they're also educated during the AGMs and such kind of thing, just slotting in a 20 minutes, 30 minutes to educate your people about why they need to enable the anti-SIM swap thing, why they need to ensure their passwords are kept properly, why they need to connect securely, why they shouldn't share their PINs and passwords with anyone and everyone. You see, it helps reinforce all these things because if we put in all the technology as an SME or a SACCO and our user isn't well educated, they would still be called and give away their PIN. They would still be called and give away their passwords. They would still be called and give away their personal information. So it has to go across board and it has to be very intentional for all these organizations. So for the SACCOs, SMEs, they can start with AGMs. Slot in some time. Brief session, take people through what you're seeing as a big problem. SIM swap has been a big problem for such organizations. So spend some time, talk to them about it, help them understand why it's important to do this, why they shouldn't do this, why they should call immediately they hear something like this, why they shouldn't give out this information. It takes care of that level. Now you go into the organization itself. What can we do in a month? Can we just create a short bulletin, 5 points, that would help reinforce this information to the team that's working on the ground? Then we move to the next level, management. They have retreats every now and then to discuss strategy, etc. During those retreats, can we spare 30 minutes or one of the days for half a day, talk about security and why it's important? The board members also meet regularly. During those meetings, can we slot in a 5-10 minute discussion around security? So it just ensures that across board, we're speaking the same language and we understand why this is important. So with that education, I think it takes things to another level and we'll be able to get the information across to each and everyone.
You know, Brian, something you said that is so profound is just how to go about it, because I feel like because we are doing a documentary. We are producing a documentary on cyber hygiene practices for small, medium enterprises. And one of the people that I interviewed, they said like, of where, the question was like, where do we begin? They feel like it's such a hurdle, but you break it down so well, because the way you talk about the board, you talk about, the employees, you talk about the management, is something that is doable if it's not as hard as it seems. So, what are some? Are there any cost-effective cybersecurity practices or strategies specifically tailored for SMEs with limited budget? Because we are trying also to make them know it's not like you're going to spend a fortune on it, but are there some which you can recommend they can be able to embrace?
Yes, even with minimal budget, I think what some of these tools do is they take whatever we're doing to a different level. But there are things that we can do on a day-to-day practice that generally improve our cybersecurity posture. We talk about rotating our passwords, that we change our passwords. You don't need budget to change passwords. Yeah? We look at how we do our updates for our systems, that we just embrace a certain culture that whenever updates come out, the minimum we can be at is the last version. It may not, we can use a tool to help us keep track of it, but for some of the SMEs, they deal with minimal systems. You have 5 at most, 10 in some cases for some of the larger ones. But you can keep track that the systems, we last updated them X number of months ago. Can we regularly have this practice where we go about checking our systems, our software, is it up to date, and we ensure we update it? We look at an antivirus solution. We get an antivirus solution that is properly just paid for and licensed, that will work through and through and send us the alerts whenever there's something. There are those small practices that we can put in place, that we've set a certain employee's device to time out. If I'm not using it, after 30 seconds, 60 seconds, it just locks. It helps protect some data, because that system could have access to sensitive data sitting on it. So if we've done that, then we've secured it to a certain level. We're using our strong passwords, we're patching our systems well, we're keeping track of the updates, we're educating our users. There are things that we can do that will help us do certain things right. Even with the passwords for systems, if we know that this is an account used for X, Y, and Z, we shouldn't use it across board. You see, you'll find one account being used by 6 people. I mean, there's no system that should do that for you. Essentially, this account is for Brian. This account is for Cecilia. So if anything happens to Cecilia's account, we can tell who had access to it and which systems Cecilia's account has access to. But if we all share our passwords, if we use the same account administrator to do everything across the entire environment, truly we're not helping ourselves.
Yes.
But there are those practices that we can put in place that would really help us. Yeah.
Just a build up on that question, just a second. It's on the issue of software updates. Yes, what is the importance of regular software updates and patch management of SMEs?
It plays a very big role. It plays a very, very big role. There's something we're talking about where it's called technology debt. But I'll break it down into a very simple thing. It's just essentially things that we do that make it impossible for us to move ahead technology-wise. We've used an old system from time immemorial. It's no longer supported even by the vendor. Windows 7 may be in use, Windows XP may be in use in some organizations. And we keep using it despite it not being supported anymore. So in such a case, whenever vulnerabilities or issues are there, you can't fix them because the system is no longer supported. So just being conscious enough to know we've been using Windows 10. When is it no longer going to be supported? So we plan to move to the next version, 11. We have a Windows Server X. When will it be supported and no longer be supported? We move to that next version. And then we just keep track. Microsoft has released X and Y patches for this system, have we applied them? Have we not applied them? If you don't apply them, then the reality is you're vulnerable. And you'll always be vulnerable for as long as that system is running and available in your network, which means the data on that system also easily accessible. The people who interact with that system can be compromised.
Yes.
So it has a very large ripple effect. So patching of our systems or regularly updating them, as well as backups for the systems, becomes very important. Yes.
Okay. So, how can SMEs continuously monitor and evaluate their cybersecurity efforts to ensure they remain effective?
With that, I'd say it's two sides of a coin. If you have nothing in place, the best place to start is get someone to help. At least get a baseline that you can say, this is how things are looking. This is how bad or this is how good things are. And then come up with a plan, a long-term plan, 5 years more or less, of how you'll continuously improve your security posture and assess it. So for a start, I'd really emphasize on getting an expert to come in and help. There'll always be people who are tailored to those markets. So you'll be able to find someone who's affordable enough to give such kind of input and advice. And now they'll be able to help guide you on what needs to happen. And over time, these organizations can start building their own internal capacity, where we're now educating someone who's within the IT team or something of the sort to become more aware about security, how to test, what to look for, what to observe, what kind of issues and how to handle them, how to deal with incidents, etc. And even start doing the internal user awareness training over time. So first, get someone who's more or less an expert, let them review, let them give you input on what needs to happen. And then now you take it up internally in terms of capacity building so that there's someone internally responsible for security within the organization. They're the ones who make sure that these patches are done. They're the ones who are making sure updates are done. They're the ones who are making sure backups are done. User awareness training is done. And such kind of things are also reported to management and in turn to the board. So over time, you'll build the culture internally and build capacity internally. But at first, you may need external help. Then as time goes by, you build the capacity internally. You can even do there's some organizations that do the assessments fully internally.
Oh, wow.
And now they'll only require an external expert whenever they need to report to the regulatory body, that is like SASRA or CBK in such kind of cases.
Thank you for that. So as we come to the tail end of this conversation,
Yes.
Can you recommend any reliable resources or organization that SMEs can turn to for further guidance on cybersecurity? Affordable ones.
That's a very difficult one.
Just
But
try.
the very honestly, there are very many. KICTANet does a lot in terms of educating people.
A lot.
I've seen CA do a lot as well. And that's even on the government side. CA, ICT Authority, SASRA, CBK, they've been really instrumental in putting out information, having forums that people can discuss. We've seen ISACA, ISPAC, and all these organizations try and do this. Even the SACCOs have their own annual meetups where they invite different partners to come and share information. Tatua Digital Resilience has also been doing a lot and putting out even tools and such kind of things. I know also the organization I work for has been trying to really work with the SMEs and small organizations, that's Serianu. I think there are very many. It's just that we've not put that information out there as much as we'd have liked to. But there are very many organizations that are out here and willing to help and hold these organizations' hands to get them to a more secure and resilient step or phase within their structures.
And it's very good to know that there are organizations out there, because also people need to know where they can go for help when they need it. Yes.
Very true.
So Brian, what is the one thing that you would want to say as we conclude this interview?
I'd like to say to the SMEs, please keep taking this seriously. Please keep investing more in terms of time, knowledge and also financially in improving the security posture. There's a lot that has been done right, but there's still more that needs to happen. But I'm really happy to see how far things have come and where we're yet to go.
I think that's the most encouraging part of this conversation because, as I say, we are doing a documentary
Yes.
that is KICTANet. And when you interview them, you are left to wonder, my goodness, what's happening here? Because you see the digital habits are quite poor. But when you say that we are improving, then there's actually a lot of hope because as we said, literally everyone has no choice but to embrace the issue of the digital platform. That means cybersecurity issues have to be there.
Yeah.
So Brian, on behalf of KICTANet, thank you so much. On behalf of Digital Data, thank you so much for making the time.
Thank you so much.
So, as I said when we began this episode has been made possible by our friends from KICTANet. KICTANet is Kenya ICT Action Network. Kenya ICT Action Network. It's a multi-stakeholder think tank for people and institutions interested and involved in ICT policy and regulation. Please check out their website. They have amazing resources. As Brian kept saying, KICTANet is one of the places that you can go as a small, medium enterprises, and you'll find so much information on your cyber hygiene practices. So thank you so much, and see you on the next episode.